In the days leading up to January 10, 1983, Roy DeMeo, the former butcher's apprentice and creator of the Gemini method to dispose of murder victims for the Gambino crime family, felt trapped between a law enforcement task force pursuing him and members of his own crew who feared he'd turn on them to avoid a long prison sentence. On January 10, 1983, DeMeo was killed by a member of his own hit squad on orders from Gambino family boss Paul Castellano. His body was placed in the trunk of a car and, with low winter temperatures, it soon froze. DeMeo dressed in a long overcoat with a pocket concealing a sawed-off shotgun. He drove the streets of Brooklyn in a new 1983 Cadillac registered in his wife's name. In the trunk was a chandelier from his Long Island home he once intended to have repaired. But it was now far from his mind. A few weeks before, a federal grand jury had subpoenaed DeMeo, for a second time, to testify in a racketeering case. He told his son Albert, whose 17th birthday was January 10, that his father was marked for death. A police investigation into the Gambinos' profitable international car theft ring led to joint local and federal probes into a string of mob homicides. A member of DeMeo's car theft and hit crew, Vito Arena, had flipped and told federal prosecutors about several murders he participated in for DeMeo. DeMeo himself or with his crew participated in more than 200 homicides almost without detection starting in the 1970s. In June 1982, Arena showed police where to find the body of one of the crew's victims, a low-level hoodlum encased in a cement-filled oil barrel submerged in Mauritius Bay off of Long Island. Growing increasingly fearful, DeMeo likely heard rumors that Gambino boss Paul Castellano wanted to silence him. He discovered too late that the loyalty of his oldest and closest friends lay with the boss. Lured to a garage in Brooklyn used by the car ring, the 42-year-old DeMeo met with his trusted comrade and mentor, Anthony Nino Gaggi, a Gambino capo 15 years his senior. He'd known Nino since 1965. But Nino had to obey Castellano's hit command. No sooner had DeMeo removed his jacket than Nino opened fire. DeMeo tried to deflect the shots with his hands, but 2 slugs burst into his face. Other shooters, his colleagues in murder, probably helped inflict his total 7 head wounds. They carried his body and laid it in the trunk of the Cadillac, draping the chandelier over the corpse. They drove the car and left it in the lot of a Bayside boat club in Brooklyn. With low winter temperatures, his body soon froze. Despite complaints, the auto remained parked there for 10 days until police towed it. Hours later, they opened the trunk. DeMeo's family would later receive more than $1 million in property DeMeo had put in their names. Rivaling Murder Inc. Killings performed by DeMeo and his troupe of 6 sadists would rival that of Brooklyn's Murder Incorporated of the 1930s. If boss Castellano demanded a contract hit or message-sending murder, with the body dumped in public to serve as a warning, DeMeo and his paid goons were there to oblige. DeMeo was a loan shark, and with his crew made a fortune stealing luxury cars from New York streets, 4 to 7 vehicles a night. The stolen cars were sold overseas. The team also pushed illegal drugs. He regularly kicked bundles of cash from the car ring up to Castellano. DeMeo killed his first man in 1973, Paul Rothenberg, New York's premier distributor of pornographic movies who made extortion payments to DeMeo and Nino. 3 weeks before, authorities had raided Rothenberg's film processing business and questioned him about his bank checks to DeMeo. Nino ordered the hit. DeMeo tailed and led Rothenberg into an alley in Roslyn, Long Island, and fired a silenced .38 caliber handgun twice into his head. That first rubout invigorated DeMeo's simmering sociopathic demeanor. As a former butcher's assistant, DeMeo bragged of possessing the skills to slice, chop and dismember hit victims for easy, unseen disposal. His perfected way of murdering and packaging bodies was named the Gemini method for the location and procedures used. The site of the butchering was the Gemini Lounge, a locals bar he secretly owned on Flatlands Avenue in the Canarsie area of East Brooklyn. Hit targets unknowingly entered a door outside the bar into a flat rented by gang member Joseph Guglielmo, nicknamed Dracula. Dracula's apartment was a slaughterhouse, otherwise known as Horror Hotel. Inside, DeMeo's murder toolkit included guns, ropes, knives, ice picks, and various accoutrements for carving, chopping, and sawing. Victims of the ritual-like Gemini method would first suffer a suppressed gunshot to the head. Then, as former DeMeo associate turned witness Dominic Montillo testified in court, somebody would wrap a towel around to stop the blood and somebody would stab him in the heart to stop the blood from pumping. The guys, some clad only in underwear to avoid stains, would drag the body to the bathroom, let it bleed out down the shower drain, then put the corpse on a swimming pool liner spread in the living room, cut the body up, place the pieces in plastic bags, and finally in separate cardboard boxes for delivery to Brooklyn's Fountain Avenue dump. Gene Mustaine and Jerry Capeci, authors of Murder Machine, A True Story of Murder, Madness, and the Mafia, coined the phrase the Gemini method to describe DeMeo's system for killing and dismembering victims. In one case, DeMeo reportedly inserted a man's severed head into a trash compactor. Arena later testified in federal court about when DeMeo and another shooter killed two unsuspecting car ring members inside a dark building in 1979. Roy said, "We have to cut them up," Arena said. Then, during the dismemberment session of the victims, Roy instructed me and Henry, Borelli, believe it or not, to go and buy some pizza. DeMeo's credo was no body, no crime. But his glaring personality flaws. His rashness and dread, as the police and U.S. Attorney's office closed in, finally enveloped him. When an 18-year-old door-to-door vacuum cleaner salesman came to DeMeo's house, DeMeo, believing the college kid was a Cuban drug cartel hitman from an ongoing dispute, fired shots at him. As the terrified youth attempted to drive away, DeMeo drove after him and in public, before horrified witnesses leapt from his car and shot and killed him. Nino took notice of DeMeo's misstep of murdering an innocent civilian. Then Arena, a hitman DeMeo had hired, started singing. When DeMeo got another grand jury order to testify in late 1982, Castellano had seen enough. DeMeo's death occurred at the start of the Great Fall of New York's 5 crime families during the 1980s. As of 1984, the FBI estimated that half the 1,600 members of La Cosa Nostra in America resided in the New York area. That year, Castellano and Nino were among 21 defendants, including some survivors of DeMeo's crew, to face federal allegations in the car theft ring, 25 related murders, drug trafficking, loan sharking, extortion, fraud and prostitution, although not all would stick. Some cooperated with the Office of Southern District U.S. Attorney Rudolph Giuliani. A couple of others, such as Dracula, disappeared, almost certainly killed without a trace by DeMeo's remaining cronies. Castellano, on a break in his federal racketeering trial in December 1985, died on a New York street from gunfire delivered by allies of future Gambino boss John Gotti. In 1988, Nino died from heart trouble in jail while on trial for racketeering. Arena, released from prison in 1988 based on his damning testimony, moved to Texas. In 1991, while an armed Arena tried to rob a store in Houston, a clerk shot and killed him. In June 1989, 7 members of DeMeo's crew were convicted of racketeering. 2 of his former buddies in murder, Anthony Center and Joseph Testa, were among 5 also found guilty of participating in 11 slayings. Center, DeMeo's right-hand man who once chopped a body into 9 pieces for disposal, and Testa each got life sentences plus 20 years in federal prison. The Roy DeMeo crew is the most violent crew executed in federal court, as far as my knowledge, Assistant U.S. Attorney William Mack Jr. said after the sentencing, adding that DeMeo engaged in wholesale murder.
What's good, everybody? Thank you all for joining me. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to watch my show. I hope you guys enjoy that. If you guys want to donate, you can donate through Cash App, Bill Staxx 2021. And I appreciate everybody who donates to the show. All the money that comes to this show is going to go right back into it. And I'll be able to do more things. So I appreciate you guys. And I got another one I'm going to play for you guys right now. So let's get into it.
Valachi, in full. Joseph Michael Valachi, born September 22, 1903, New York, New York, U.S. Died April 3, 1971, La Tuna Federal Correctional Institution, Texas. American gangster, member of Lucky Luciano's mob family, who turned informer in 1962. Valachi held a rank in the mafia equivalent to that of a sergeant, with interests chiefly in the numbers rackets and other gambling from the 1930s to the 50s. In 1959 he was convicted of narcotics violations and sentenced to 15 to 20 years in prison. In June 1962, in the federal prison at Atlanta, Georgia, crime boss Vito Genovese, a fellow inmate, suspecting him, incorrectly, of having become an informer, gave him the kiss of death, a sign that he was to be killed. Valachi panicked, killed a fellow prisoner who he mistakenly thought was his assassin, and, in revenge against the death threat, told all to the U.S. Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs, the FBI, the Justice Department, and the U.S. Senate Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations, headed by John L. McClellan. Valachi was the first syndicate member ever to describe the history, membership, and inner workings of the national crime cartel popularly called the Mafia, what Valachi termed Cosa Nostra, our thing. Robert Kennedy called his testimony the biggest single intelligence breakthrough yet in combating organized crime and racketeering in the United States. Investigations, indictments, and convictions followed Valachi's testimony.
Hope you guys appreciated that one. I got more, a whole bunch. So I will be releasing them, here and there. And I will have really interesting ones. I got a pretty good one right here. I'll give you guys one more, and then I'll see you guys tomorrow.
Fat Tony Salerno, May 1, 1911 to July 27, 1992, was a New York mobster who served as front boss of the Genovese crime family from the 1970s until his conviction in 1986. Salerno was born and raised in East Harlem, New York. As a young man, he became involved in gambling, numbers, loan sharking and protection rackets through the Genovese family. Salerno climbed the family ranks by controlling a possible $1 million a year numbers racket operation in Harlem and a major loan sharking operation. Many mobsters moved out of Harlem and East Harlem when they became predominantly Latino and African American. However, Salerno kept his headquarters at the Palma Boys Social Club in East Harlem. Usually seen wearing a fedora hat and chomping on a cigar, he was nicknamed Fat Tony due to his size. Family success in the 1970s and 80s, Salerno divided his time between a home in Miami Beach, Florida, a convert, 100-acre, KM2, Sing equals on estate and horse farm in upstate Rhinebeck, New York, the Palma Boys Club, and his apartment in the upscale Gramercy Park section of Manhattan. Salerno served as consigliere, underboss, and acting boss, or front boss, of the Genovese family. In 1978, Salerno was sentenced to 6 months in prison for illegal gambling and tax evasion charges. In early 1981, Salerno suffered a mild stroke and retreated to his Rhinebeck estate to recuperate. At the time of his stroke, Salerno was underboss. After his recovery and the March 31, 1981 death of Genovese boss Frank Thierry, Salerno apparently became the head of the Genovese family. Front boss. Although Salerno was widely thought to be the boss of the Genovese family, it later became clear that Salerno was not the real power. Vincent, the Fish, Caffaro, Salerno's right-hand man later turned informant, said that Salerno was only a front man. Ever since the death of boss Vito Genovese in 1969, the real family leader had been Philip, then Quint, Lombardo. Over the years, Lombardo used several acting bosses to disguise his true status from law enforcement and the other 4 New York crime families. Over the years, Lombardo groomed Vincent, Chin, Gigante as his successor. According to Caffaro, Salerno became front boss in 1981 to protect Gigante. Commission case in 1985, law enforcement finally caught up with Salerno. On February 25, 1985, Salerno and the 8 other New York bosses who comprised the Mafia Commission were indicted in the so-called Mafia Commission trial. Their trial started in September 1986 and lasted 3 months. On November 19, 1986, Salerno was convicted on RICO Act charges and sentenced, along with 6 other defendants, to 100 years in prison. Prison time and death. In October 1986, Fortune magazine named the 75-year-old Salerno as America's top gangster in power, wealth and influence. Many would dispute the top power and influence assessment, and the money figures were greatly exaggerated by federal and local law enforcement. The article in Fortune accomplished what they wanted: bring attention to their indictment of Salerno. After his conviction and imprisonment, Salerno's health deteriorated due to his diabetes and suspected prostate cancer. In July 1992, Anthony Salerno died of a stroke at the Medical Center for Federal Prisoners in Springfield, Missouri. He died alone at age 81 without family members allowed at his bedside. Salerno was buried at St. Raymond's Cemetery in the Throgs Neck section of the Bronx in New York.
Hope you guys like that one. Joe Della, what's up? How are you? XXX, how are you? Montauk, what's up? Hope you guys are all having a great day. Maureen, what's up? Thank you for the super sticker, Louis the Lion. I got a lot more content to bring you guys. Make sure you hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell so you can get my videos every time they drop. I got some major stuff coming. See you guys soon. And remember, don't be a bitch.